What's up, everybody? Welcome to a championship edition of Talking Ball. Y'all, I am Cass Hargis. That is Jason Dewey and Lance Lacoste. And it's week 15. We've got a heck of a weekend lined up in the Superdome. We've got 8 games, 16 teams. Obviously 8 teams are going to realize a dream of all their players this weekend. So it's definitely an exciting weekend. The second weekend in December is always a good one in the state of Louisiana. I would say that this year, and look, maybe we can go back every year and say the same thing. There's some matchups this year that are just absolutely unbelievable. Just really, really good matchups all across the board. If you're new here, if you're not new here, the way that we're going to do this in the past, what we've usually done is start it with Division I and work our way down divisions. We're tonight to preview all these games. We're going to go in order of the schedule in the Superdome. So we will start with Division 4 non-select and work our way through, and we will end with Division 1 select. So that's how the show will work. I'm fired up for it. I'm fired up for the weekend. Let's do it. First game, starting us off in the Superdome Thursday at high noon, 12 o'clock. We have Haynesville and Mangum, two teams that I think before the season, you point to it, you say these two teams are going to be in the Superdome. From Haynesville, you can say that every year. Mangum, especially this year, Mangum is looking for its first state championship since 1956. They have made it to the Superdome since then. Their last appearance was 2015. Haynesville, one of the most storied programs in Louisiana high school football, their last state title was in 2014, which seems, when you look at it, it seems like a long time ago to those people up there. I'm sure it seems like lifetimes ago with their expectations. Mangum comes in on the year 11-2 record. Haynesville is 11-0. Mangum rolled through the playoffs. They had a bye in the first round. They beat West St. John, East Feliciana, and South Plaquemines on their way to the Superdome. Haynesville, not much problem for them as well in the playoffs. They had a round 1 bye. They defeated Homer, Jonesboro Hodge, and Jeanerette last week in the semifinals. But let's dive right into it. I think this is a really good matchup with two teams. Haynesville's defense giving up 8 points a game. This Mangum offense scoring 46 points a game. I think that's going to be the story of the game.
This is definitely a matchup, like you said, where we knew this. All roads led to this, where these two teams felt like they were far and beyond the two best teams in this division, and so it's great to see these two teams make their way to the Dome. Like you said, it's been a while since both of these teams won a state title. I was pretty shocked to see that Haynesville hadn't won a state title since 2014. It feels like they're always there, and they are always there. But first time this week, this is a great opportunity for them to be back. The bottom line is Haynesville's defense giving up 8 points per game. If I'm Mangum, I think I'm taking the football first, seeing if we can start fast, maybe have a trick play lined up, see if you can catch some early momentum, build some confidence going up against this really tough Haynesville defense. I just feel like that is going to be the way to victory for Mangum. I think the other way around, if Haynesville gets out to a lead, it just feels like their defense is so smothering it'd be almost impossible to make a comeback versus this Haynesville team, which, of course, is led by Isaiah Washington, the LSU commit, who's one of the best players in Louisiana. And so this will be a really fun matchup. Again, two teams, all these kids are pretty new to the Dome, and so exciting time for both of these programs.
Well, when you look at this Mangum team, we've talked about how they played in one of the toughest 2A districts in the state, and I think that stood the test of time. Again, they're a football team that they like to run. They can be physical. They have a really solid offensive line, which is, again, experienced. They're big. They're physical. Kobe Casey for their offense does a great job operating at quarterback. Willie Randolph has been there, a big-time playmaker for that football team as well, running the football. I believe it was 4 rushing touchdowns a week ago, along with Rayon Bell, who, when he touches the ball, has been really impressive. But, man, that Haynesville defense gives up 8.4 points a game. They're very big. They're very physical. And we can talk about Isaiah Washington, and he's a tremendous athlete, obviously going to LSU. You also look at Donnie Critton, who's a all-state caliber player as well, the second team all-state a year ago. Both of those young men had pick sixes last week, but their offensive and defensive line are very big and physical, along with Henderson in the back in that option offense. So, look, there you have Jeremiah Evans up front, 6 foot, 300 pounds. Andrea Brooks, 6'6", 335. They are big physical football players, and they like to hit. And when you look at the other side, Mangum, look, we talk about the athleticism as well, but I think this is one of the best trench matchups we're going to see in the Dome, regardless of classification. So these are two teams that are familiar with each other. The last time that Mangum played in the Dome, the last 2 times I should say, that's not true. 2 of the last 3 times I should say that Mangum played in the Dome, they lost to Haynesville. The last time was a 16-0 win for Haynesville in 2014. And, Scott Wiltshire, coach for Mangum, was part of that staff. So that adds a little bit of extra fuel to the fire. However, if you look at the other side, man, Coach Franklin's been there. And his teams have made it. They haven't been able to close the deal in recent years. To your point, it's like I was shocked when I was doing the research and noticing, like, I can't believe this is the last time they won a title. So I'm really excited to see this one play out. And this is going to be a really exciting Division IV non-select state title.
Yeah, and it's as familiar as these programs are with the Superdome. It's going to be really neat to see that these kids haven't been there. So to see them experience for the first time. Your point on Mangum, Jason, that district with Oak Grove and Washita Christian, their 2 losses this year. Week 1, Gina, who's in the state championship,
right.
And in week 8 they lost to Washita Christian, which that's a program that's as good as any in the state. So 2 good losses for this Mangum team. They're battle tested. This is going to be a heck of a matchup getting this prep classic started in the Superdome on Thursday. Following the Division IV non-select state championship will be the Division IV select state championship. This game is at 3:30 on Thursday in the Superdome. Ascension Catholic comes in as the 5 seed. They are 11-2. They will take on the Riverside Rebels, who come in as the 2 seed. They are 11-1. Ascension Catholic is looking for their first state title since 1992. Riverside looking for their first state title since 2006. Jason, what I'm so interested in, you mentioned last show about Ascension Catholic. I think you used the scientific term boogeyman. But Ascension Catholic is 4-0 since 2019 against Riverside. So you better believe that Riverside. I bet they wanted Ascension Catholic to try to rid of all of that. This is a Riverside team. We say it every week. We talk about them. They're young, but they're experienced. They're super talented. Jaden Obikwe, their running back, he's listed as a running back. He plays all the positions. He went over 1,000 yards. They're sophomores and freshmen all over this defensive backfield. They're extremely talented. And then on the other side, speaking of talent, the state's single-season rushing leader plays for Ascension Catholic, Trevin Simon. He broke that record last week. He is over 3,000 yards and 60 touchdowns for the year. They have scored no less than 45 points, speaking of Ascension Catholic, in this playoff run. Their most impressive victory last week in the semis, defeating the 1 seed Westminster Christian 45-14. Riverside has scored no less than 38 points. They beat Ascension Episcopal last week 42-14. So both teams, I think maybe the last 3 weeks, have separated themselves from the rest of the pack, and now they find themselves in the Superdome playing for a state championship.
Definitely can't ask for a better running back matchup. I mean, these guys were insane last week following these games. It felt like every time Trevin Simon scored, Jaden Obikwe also scored on the other side of the bracket. It was unbelievable. They both went for, I think Obikwe had 7 total touchdowns and Simon had 6 total touchdowns, I believe. I might be one off, but either way, they each scored, I promise you, at least 6 touchdowns. It was crazy. But I think that this Riverside football team, I saw them early in the season. I think they are a very balanced football team. They have so much more than just Jaden Obikwe. Boogie Johnson on the perimeter was incredible. The first time I saw this team play before they actually added Jaden Obikwe, he's a heck of a player. And then the unit I'm really looking for is Coach Lashney, the defensive coordinator of Riverside. His defense, they are multiple, they're tough, they're physical. They went up against Quincy Adams, the tough running game of Terrebonne, and did really well against that team. So I have confidence that Coach Lashney is going to come out with a great game plan for this Trevin Simon-led offense of Ascension Catholic. And so that's the unit I'm really looking for. I think they're going to have a huge night. They're only giving up 10 points per game. Ascension Catholic, their defense has not been as impressive as Riverside's. And so, I'm looking for the balance of this Riverside program and what they bring to the table on both sides of the ball.
I think these two teams have that familiarity with each other. We talked about last year. It was a win for Ascension Catholic in the quarterfinals. It was a 40-35 victory for them over the Rebels. In 2022, it was a 7-point win for Ascension Christian. Then you go back to 2019, it was a 55-20 victory in round one. So these teams have familiarity with each other, although, as recently as last year. And I mentioned to Lance before, I kind of shared with you guys the list of records that have been set in the Dome. And I think a record that is very attainable for either, and I mentioned specifically Simon, but Lance brought up for either one of these guys, right?
Both.
272 yards set by Nick Brossette, who at the time was the single season leading rushing record, ironically. That was back in 2014, that record was set. So I think that record is in danger regardless of the team. I think both guys could possibly break that record the way these teams run the football. You talk about Boogie. They like to line him up at quarterback too, at defense. And he can play all over the field. Obikwe's been a guy I've been high on for quite some time. Bourgeois, the Rebels quarterback, is an experienced starter against a defense, as Lance mentioned. They've gotten the job done. I think they've played some really big games over the stretch. However, I don't know if there's been a more impressive playoff victory than Riverside taking on Ouachita Christian. Although Ascension Catholic had to go on the road the last 2 weeks to win their games, and Catholic Point Capee is not an easy place to go win. So I think this is going to be a game that whoever can get enough stops and runs the football more effectively is going to win this football game. Not a super courageous pick, guys. Not super courageous prediction, but that's the way that both of these teams have played. And I think Riverside can pass the football. They've just leaned so heavily on that run game over the past few weeks that I think this is going to be a very interesting matchup, especially between two teams that are so familiar with each other.
It almost feels like what may stand in the way of someone breaking the rushing record is the end zone. And if they just can't keep running past the end zone. Like if they keep scoring, it's going to be hard to rack up yards.
I mean, definitely could be the case.
If Coach Lashney hears this episode, I just want him to know that I do not support that message. I'm taking the under. I'm confident. I'm confident in his defense. He's not going to give up the most rushing yards in the history of the Superdome.
I don't think so either. I think that Riverside just feels like maybe the more well-rounded team.
Yeah.
But who knows? Who knows? The nightcap Thursday night, this is a super intriguing matchup for all kinds of different reasons. In the Division III Select State Championship, starting at 7 o'clock or quite possibly 9 o'clock on Thursday night. Calvary Baptist, the 6th seed, they come in at 12-1. They will face off against the 5-seeded Dunham Tigers. They also come in at 12-1. Calvary last won the state title in 2023 for Dunham. They were in the Superdome last year. They lost to Catholic Iberia. Their last state championship, 2004. Calvary, 2 super impressive wins the last 2 weeks in the playoffs on the road, both of them on the road at Jules Sumner, winning 14-7. And then just last week in the semifinals on the road in Crowley, they defeated Notre Dame 34-28 in overtime. Dunham absolutely rolled through their first 2 rounds after a round 1 bye, and then last week maybe one of the top 3 victories in the state this year. They go on the road and they defeat an extremely talented, a very good, the 1 seed LCA Knights 49-48. Dunham obviously led by their quarterback Elijah Haven, but it's way more than that. The receivers are really good. They play really good defense. Coach Weiner coaches the team. This is maybe as a complete of a team as we've seen. And then you throw in the fact that Elijah Haven's their quarterback and they're extremely dangerous. Calvary, a team that defensively they're giving up 18.2 points per game, but the last 2 weeks, some of the most impressive defensive performances they've had all year, especially holding Jules Sumner to 7 points. This is a team, speaking of Calvary, that comes in with 17 interceptions on the season. And you've got to think that for them to slow down this Dunham offense is going to have to be through turnovers and through their offense, keeping Dunham's offense on the sideline.
I think you said this Dunham team is a very complete team as well as his Calvary team. And I think that's very fitting for this bracket because this was probably the most complete bracket. This was the one – there's a lot of brackets – I wouldn't say a lot, but some of the brackets that kind of chalk. You probably could have guessed who's going to be playing in the Dome. This bracket, I do not feel that way. This was very unpredictable. So many good teams with so many good players for some of these smaller schools, And so Dunham, you said it. It's so much. Elijah Haven is one of the best football players I've ever seen. Anybody that hasn't seen him, my only comparison is Cam Newton. He's unbelievable. To think he's a junior is insane. But they've done it all around. He's got a bunch of talented senior receivers that have been great as well. And then the Dunham defense only giving up 14 points a game. You have to score a lot more than 14 points to beat Elijah Haven's offense. So, that's where the obvious challenge is. With all that said, this Calvary team kind of feels like a clash of two styles. This Calvary team, I watched them a couple weeks ago. I was very impressed with them defensively. Most people think of Calvary as an offensive show. This is not them this year. This year, they are a defensive team. They have many guys. What was the number 7 players with double-digit tackle for losses? That's incredible. You already mentioned the interceptions, which they're going to need against this Calvary team. But that is the obvious matchup I'm looking for, is these defensive backs, Luke Miller, Trey McDaniel, Ty Knight. How can they match up versus these Dunham wide receivers? And the ball's going to be up in the air. It's their chance to go win this game for this defense by coming up with big plays. They got to force some turnovers. It's going to be in that defensive backfield that makes the difference.
You'd think with like the second lowest classification, maybe you'd see a shortage of athletes when when we discuss this for the entire season, guys. I mean, I'll be very transparent. You don't know how the bracket's going to shake out, who's going to end up where inside the bracket, but I think it's fair and safe to say we all kind of thought that LCA would be in this football game. And for Dunham to go on the road and win against that team tells you all you need to know about this team. They're stacked with athletes top to bottom. Their offensive and defensive line is not massive, but man, are they physical. They get after it. And I think you look at Elliott Trahan, who's all over the field. Their linebackers do an exceptional job playing sideline to sideline, rushing the quarterback, playing the pass as well. Colin Piku was a guy who played some running back, but really played a lot of linebacker this season, does an excellent job. But guys, Trevor Heyman, we talk about weapons and versatility, excellent player at linebacker, but man, he started the season at wide receiver for the sake of his team. The Tigers move him to running back, and they kind of move him all over the field. They'll let him run the football. They'll let him catch the football. Again, he has over 800 total yards and 13 touchdowns on the year, both receiving and running the football. And, when you have a quarterback that's thrown for 3,600 yards and 59 touchdowns and rush for another 660 yards, there's still that football to go around. And, Jarvis Washington, that South Alabama commit, he has over 20 touchdowns on the year and it's been a great playmaker. Chris Thomas, who plays both sides for the Tigers, is a very physical football player. And then you have Richard Montgomery, who's 13 touchdowns himself and over 600 yards. So they've got guys that go both ways. Their defense, again, they attack really well. They've dominated the line of scrimmage when I got to watch them play up close and personal. And on the other side of the football, I mean, Calvary's offense is not too shabby either, guys. Hudson Price has done an excellent job over the course of the season passing the football. He has one of the top receiving prospects in the state in Braylon Hugland, who only has 1,400 yards and 21 touchdowns himself. And then you got a back in Zyron Miles, who has over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. So they're able to move the football really effectively, but they've been able to win in a magnitude of ways over the course of this playoff run. They had a tight, low-scoring game against Jules Sumner. Last week, they take it to overtime in a game where even by their own admission, they kind of felt like they were dead in the water at a certain point. So for them to come back in that game, so they're playing with a level of confidence. Meanwhile, Dunham going on the road, beating what we've talked about is maybe the most impressive team over this year in LCA. They're going to come in with a ton of confidence, and it feels like Dunham is a team that has been around. Like they've continued to circle and just have not been able to finish in the Superdome. I think this year is easily their best opportunity they've had in quite some time. According to my notes, they haven't won one since 2004. So, I mean, that's considering how often they've been in this position. again, this feels like as good of an opportunity as ever with the experience they have at the skill with Elijah Haven. I think this would be a really fun matchup between two teams that are consistently in this position.
Yeah, no, I think this game, and look, all of these games, obviously, when you're previewing them and you look at it on paper, they all look really good. I think this one has a chance to be maybe one of the best of the weekend, for all those reasons just listed. Friday, we turn the page to Friday, 12 o'clock, Division II non-select. Somebody's going to win their first state title in program history. At 12 o'clock on Friday in the Superdome, Iowa, number 2 seed, Iowa Yellow Jackets, come over to New Orleans with a 13-0 record, and they will take on the 1 seed, North DeSoto, who also comes in with a 13-0 record. Look, you can look at this bracket, and you can see number 1 and number 2 throughout the year. North DeSoto kind of felt like they were the best team in this division all year long. Iowa just very quietly, hasn't lost a game all year. Defensively, they've been extremely, extremely sound. They've played really well. They've only turned it over 10 times. They have 20 take. Like, they just do a lot of things really well, and they put themselves in a position that I know the community of Iowa couldn't be any more excited to make that drive over to the Superdome, and North DeSoto couldn't be more excited than drive south. This team led by Coach Dunn, who knows his way to the Superdome, knows his way around the Superdome, knows how to win. But again, this is a program looking for their first state championship. One thing I think that may come into question if these stats are correct, Iowa has not made a field goal all year, and they're 19 of 31 on PATs. And in a game like this, that's going to be the difference. Whether it's either going to be turnovers or special teams, that's going to be the difference. Unless Iowa does what they've done all year long and wins by double digits. They've done all of that up until last week when 2 weeks ago where they played Lutcher. They won 2 games by 7 points. They beat Lutcher 28-21, and they win over Belle Chase 28-21 as well in the semifinals. North DeSoto, it's a team that completely flipped the script on everybody last week. They threw for 16 yards after having a quarterback in Luke Delafield who's thrown for over 2,000 all year long. But they've shown that they can run the football and do it really well. They put up 55 points on a Plaquemine team, or 57 points on a Plaquemine team that has a really good defense in the semifinals. North DeSoto feels like maybe the most complete team, but this Iowa team definitely has something to say, and this is going to be an exciting matchup to start Friday off.
Another factor that I think gives North DeSoto a little bit of an advantage here is this is Iowa's first time ever in a dome. It's only North DeSoto's second time in the dome, but they were there just 3 years ago. These seniors were freshmen. They've been there before. And if you've ever been on the field of the dome, I don't mean metaphorically, the lights are brighter. Like,
no,
it is
true.
A different environment. If you've never seen it before, it's pretty weird to see the first time. And so I think it's an advantage to these seniors. They have been there before. They've seen it before. And then just little things like a couple years ago when John Curtis was in the dome, I guess it was about 3 years ago when me and Cass were there together. I remember talking to one of their coaches about some of their extra preparation that they put into because they know the dome so well, of how, this is how we're going to warm up at halftime of the previous game, which is different. Hydration's different because it's a different kind of humidity than what we're used to outside. And like, there's so many little factors that I think you really gained some great experience given that you were just there a few years ago versus a team that's never been there before. And so that's something that I'm looking for. Beyond that, these are two teams, another game that really seems like a clash of two styles. I watched Iowa last week. It felt like they were on a kind of sloppy field in a brawl, and it feels like that's exactly how they would prefer to play. Meanwhile, North DeSoto feels like a team that would love to be in a dome with no weather environment, right, where they can just put up 100 points. And so Iowa's defense has been incredible all year. They want to run the football. I would assume that knowing that Caston Lewis, the stud defensive back for Iowa, who they also like to play both ways a little bit. He's also their go-to guy on 2-point conversion. Saw that last week. I would assume that North DeSoto tries to play at an even faster tempo. I think they played at the fastest tempo they've ever played at. Think with the thought of let's try to wear out some of these DBs that they're trying to play both ways, right? If you could do that, put up some points, you might actually affect their offensive game as well by playing with a fast tempo. But I think this is one that you're going to find out a lot just in the first quarter. What kind of tempo these teams are playing at? Is this going to look more of a slow it down, punch for punch the way Iowa wants to play, or is it going to be a fast-paced game, more of a North DeSoto's tempo? I think we'll know by the end of the first quarter kind of who's playing, who's getting to play their style a little bit more, who's dictating the pace.
Well, and I think North DeSoto doesn't mince what they're trying to do. They played Loyola Prep, who was one of the most prolific offenses in the state, and they just continued to just run the football and, again, continue to try to put up as much points and make it a track meet. And they obviously won that football game. But when you look at North DeSoto, you guys bring up some great points. There's a team that has been there. And even about how bright the lights are, due to the placement of the lights on the ceiling, how does that affect things like special teams, catching a punt, catching a kick? When you are trying to pass the football, the lights are, again, even when you're playing under Friday night lights, it's not directly above you. So it does make it tougher to see if you're not adjusted and you haven't had that time to kind of get acquainted to the way it is. But you guys mentioned Luke Delafield, again, Northwestern State commit. He's been unbelievable. He did have a tough game last week, but he made up for it with his legs. I thought he did a great job operating his offense against this Plaquemine Green Devil team that easily could have ended up in this position. But Kenny Thomas, a guy who's been hurt for a large part of the year, still manages to get 1,500 yards. School's all-time leading rushing record has really been a pivotal point for this offense and only racked up 21 touchdowns to boot. Meanwhile, Braylon Layton, who stepped into that role, still a guy who's nearly at 1,000 yards. And again, they pass the ball all over. They got a few guys that they like to pass to, but really one of their key receivers is Braylon Moore. He's a sophomore. Again, 6 touchdowns, around 600 yards. Guys, their defense, I think, is going to have to come up in some big situations. They've forced 21 turnovers over the course of this season. I think that's going to be a key. When you look at Porter Doyle, who had 135 tackles this year, Hayden Bell, a guy who's won a state title in baseball and wrestling, looking to get the trifecta here. He's got 2 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, and 3 fumble recoveries over the course of this season. Lakin Brokenberry, who's been all over the field in this big physical offensive line that's pretty much filled with all-state, all-district caliber players. Meanwhile, I think Iowa has heard enough of the talk. And I think there's another team that we're going to bring up that feels the same way. But I was reading the comments on something, and somebody said, please pick against us again. Whoever it is on whatever show, Iowa fans, please pick against us again. We love it. Because, they've kind of embraced that role of spoiler. But, guys, 15.3 points a game defensively. That's no joke. This defense has forced 20 turnovers, and they've only turned the ball over 10 times. So a plus 10 turnover differential. While when you look at North DeSoto, they've only got a turnover differential of plus 3. So I think that's going to be key in a football game where North DeSoto is trying to push that tempo, trying to push the pace. They do move the football around with, again, they really like to lean on that run. And, Caston Lewis, we talk about him offensively, but guys, leads the team with 6 interceptions. And that's going to be key against a team that does like to air out the ball, but has leaned heavily on that run in recent weeks. So I think the Yellow Jackets are ready. They've been close. They're finally getting there, and they're going to be excited. But what I love is win or lose, whichever team it is, one of these teams will win their first state title and be their first opportunity to hold the trophy in the Superdome victorious. So I think that's going to be really fun to see for these programs.
Yeah, no doubt. And you talk about North DeSoto, these freshmen, when these seniors were freshmen, they were in the dome. Was that 2022? This Iowa team was the 2 seed and lost in the semis last year. This is a program that this doesn't come out of nowhere. They've been building towards this, and they want to go finish that deal as well. Following the Iowa North DeSoto game, another 1 versus 2 matchup at 3:30 on Friday in the Division III non-select. The Sterlington Panthers, they're the 2 seed. They come in at 11-2, and the 1 seed Gina Giants come in at 12-1. Sterlington, huge long state title drought. They're looking for their first state championship since all the way back to last year. Gina Giants have not won. They have not been to the Dome in their school's history. This is going to be a fun one you talk about a clash of styles. Both of these teams want to run the football. I think they do it a little bit differently. Gina is so explosive on offense, on the ground. Sterlington, big, physical. They come in only giving up 16 points a game. This is a Gina team that they are very comfortable if this game gets into the 50s. That's just kind of where they've been and what they've done. Sterlington obviously wants to keep it a little bit lower scoring, although they do average 46 points a game. But this is going to be fun for the standpoint that I think it could be explosive, but not in the explosive of both teams are going to put it in the air, 40 times a game. They're going to run the football. They're going to do what they do. It's going to be fun to watch. I think an interesting stat in this one, as in all the games, turnovers and special teams, Sterlington's turned the ball over 17 times this year. They've lost. They've fumbled at 14. They do have 25 takeaways, but if they put it on the ground and Gene is able to get a fumble recovery or create a takeaway, that could be the difference in the game. So that's going to be interesting. Another stat to note: Sterlington has also returned three kicks for a touchdown by three different players. So again, turnovers, special teams could go into deciding who wins this game.
Obviously, exact same talking point from the previous game. First time Gina's there, they got a lot to get used to being in a dome. Sterlington gets there every year. I think Gina in this game, they've got to play a super clean football game. Sterlington has been one of the best football teams in Louisiana, really of any classification. Gina's going to have to play a really clean game. They cannot put the ball on the ground. Like you said, they got to find ways to take it away from Sterlington, create some extra possessions. And then beyond that, they got to do what they've done great all year, which is run the football with Cedric Wilson and Daniel Hatcher. We've been hearing about those two guys all year long, how great they are. I think if they can run the football, run the clock, force turnovers, and then they've got to be clean on special teams as well, right? But I think that the longer this game lasts, I feel like the more it's going to lean towards Sterlington's hands just because of all the numbers you just read. I mean, kickoff returns for touchdowns, takeaways, everything that Sterlington can do on their side, really on both sides of the ball and in special teams. But Gina has the formula to kind of shorten his game with a great running game, again, of Cedric Wilson and Daniel Hatcher.
This Sterlington offensive line is big, physical, nasty. When you run an option style offense, that's how you want to play. I think J. Rob Breen has run that offense to perfection. He has over 1,000 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions on the year. His big guy, Devin Downs. I know Cass is familiar with this young man. Committed to go play baseball at LSU, 3-year starter. Really big key playmaker. He has 427 yards and 18 receptions, but 7 of those receptions are for touchdowns. He's a big time playmaker. And then you got TJ Birch, who's an all district, probably an all state caliber player this year with 1,300 yards, 19 touchdowns, and then tack another 3 in receiving. I think and then Xavier Stromiles, the guy who I got to watch last year at the Arbor Woods when he came to Newman, and in this type of offense, I mean, very similar style to what the Arbor Woods runs, option style offense. And when he gets his chances, he can break big plays, over 600 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns. I mean, I think, but that's led by that big physical offensive line. Like, they make the engine go. And when you are big and you are physical, you can wear teams down. Now, this defense is no joke either. When on the other side, Trey Birch might be, I've had this discussion a lot too, might be the best linebacker in the state. 3 picks, 3 fumble recoveries, and 2 forced fumbles on the season. Meanwhile, you got a guy like Steven English who has 13 tackles for loss and 3 sacks on the year. Their secondary has done a great job, as mentioned earlier. 11 interceptions on the year. They've also recovered 14 fumbles. And that turnover game is going to be a big factor in this football game. And on the other side, we talked about Gina. I watched their game last week against Union Parish. And what did we talk about? We said this is a big physical Union Parish football team. And even though their wins and loss record might not jump out at you, you know that they are going to be physical. And Gina was more physical than them. And that's saying something. It Ari Slocum up front, who is an Arkansas commit. I thought they did an excellent job executing their offense, running the football. And Lance, you mentioned it too. What they do a great job of is we're going to run the football right at you. we're gonna give the ball to Cedric Wilson and Daniel Hatcher, and we're gonna run the football, and then we're gonna let Deuce McPherson step back and pass the football on one-on-one coverage to Zadrian Cooper. And it's really been effective for them this year, so much so that they're averaging 50 points a game out of this, predominantly run formation. So I think, to your points, I think the problem is when you're talking about the game last, being short and it favoring Gina, that's not the style of play that Gina plays. They play fast paced. They like to score. So I think if Gina wins this football game, it's going to have to be a track meet because that's the type of game that they played all season. The question is, will they be able to force Sterlington into a track meet, a team that's been physical, played some of the top competition in the state, and brought them to the brink of near defeat in Washita Parish and Neville? They're only 2 losses of the year. So I think this will be a really fun one. I think Gina's going to be really amped up. It's going to be big to not let that emotion in that moment get the better of you. When you have a team in Sterlington that's been there over and over and is looking to repeat a state title last year.
Yeah, these matchups, especially with teams that have been there before and teams that have not been there, the first, Lance, you said the first quarter, I think like the first half of the first quarter can really go to dictate what happens the rest of the game. So that is the 3:30 game on Friday, the 7 o'clock game on Friday night. This actually starts a string of the last 3 games in the Prep Classic are all not just rematches, they're all intra-district rematches. These are all teams that are in the same district playing each other for the second time this year. The first one.
Before you go, we want to make sure follow, share, like, subscribe. We see all those people watching. Again, please go ahead and share us. Make sure some other people get an opportunity to see us. We appreciate the support we've had.
Tell your friends. They all got the Facebook. Tell your friends. Well, Friday night, 7 o'clock, the 7-seeded Shaw Eagles come in at 9-4. They are taking on the 1-seed 12-1 St. Charles Comets. These two teams met in week 10. St. Charles won that game 24-0. It really just defensively dominated that game over the Eagles. Shaw is the defending Division II Select State champions. St. Charles, a bit of an anomaly last year with a down year. Their last title was in 22, but this is their 6th time in the state championship in the last 7 years. The 1 year they were not happened to be last year. This game, I am so interested to see. One, I think it's going to be low scoring, and I don't know who that favors. I don't think it really even matters, to be honest. I think it's just going to be a low scoring game. I'm interested to see what Shaw does offensively to counter what St. Charles did to them in week 10. Because these coaching staffs are so good. They're going to have something. So what can Shaw do? Whether that's a formation, a wrinkle, or even if it's just maybe a completely different game plan. Maybe Shaw just wants to control the football and keep it a one-possession game as long as possible and then try to break something. Just to see how they play it, I'm interested to see. But we know that St. Charles' special teams is going to show up. We know that the defense of both teams are going to show up. This is going to be a physical, hard-hitting game on Friday night.
Muted. Lions
Mute button, got him. Got him.
Got him. I think these rematches can be so tricky to prepare for. If you're a St. Charles Catholic, you won 24-0. It's real easy to sit back and go, well, we need to stick with what we did last time, right? But, of course, Shaw's going to have a much better game plan for what you did last time too, right? I mean, they're watching that film inside and out. They're going to have a much better plan for the way you got after them last time. On the flip side of that, Joe, easy to overthink these rematches too, right? And so I just think these rematches, especially with this much on the line, really tough to kind of weigh you make adjustments and where you just, hey, let's continue what we did last time because it worked, right? But I think, the obvious is that Shaw's got to be way better on offense. It'll be fun to see how, if there are any changes to St. Charles' defense, and if Shaw does have a beat on, maybe some of the stuff they did last time, where do those adjustments come in at halftime? But Shaw's got to be better on offense. On the defensive side, I expect Shaw to do everything they can to shut down Skylar Edwards in the running game and really force Landry LeBlanc to beat him through the air. Not that he can't beat him through the air, but I just know that when we have seen teams that are forced to throw the football against the Shaw defense, they turn it over. These defensive backs for Shaw do a great job. They got some talented guys back there with Rontre Carter. He's got some offers. Jackson Williams, Tulane commit. Those are guys that can go up and get it, right? And so if they can take away Skylar Edwards, force St. Charles to throw it, create some turnovers, that feels like the most obvious way to victory for Shaw. With all that said, I mean, we've seen the St. Charles Catholic team. We say it every week. They're not going to beat themselves. They're not going to have penalties. They're not going to have any kind of special teams blunders. They tend to play a very clean game. And so Shaw's got to find ways to go win this game, to go try to force a couple turnovers through the air, and put some pressure on St. Charles.
Last week, St. Charles comes out the gate and McLean returns a kickoff to the 5-yard line, and they proceed to punch it in the very next play. And at the end of it goes, again, what do they do at the end of the game? They block a PAT to send it to overtime. Special teams is so much a key core concept of what St. Charles Catholic football is. They blocked the punt against Shaw during the regular season. So this, when you look at the way their special teams plays, that's going to be a really big factor in this football game. Plus, and I've talked about this consistently, this secondary acts as an extension of the offense, right? The way that they swarm to the football, Dax Prejean, Briggs Anderson, and of course Kristen McLean, who I mentioned, returned that kickoff before they punched it in. But another thing to keep in mind is Preston Calm, guys. He returns to this defense. He was out for a large portion of the year. So he returns to this defense that's already been only yielding, 13.2 points a game with the schedule that they had. By the way, they only played Legacy School of Texas Sports and Science, who, had the number one player in the country. So, again, they're battle tested. They played the Shaw football team. They only gave up 12 yards to the Shaw football team earlier in the season. So I think this defense has been is physical. They are prepared. Their linebackers, Creed Marix and Brooks Monica, along with Acevedo and Bovey up front. This unit has been really impressive. And I think, again, with the way that their offense is styled, Landry LeBlanc getting the football at quarterback, and that quarterback power has been effective. They like to mix it up with Evan Dufour on the motion. They'll swing the ball. They'll get him the bubble screen. And then you have Skylar Edwards, who's a guy we've talked about all throughout the season, who can just pound the rock behind that offensive line. That has been physical, and they have gotten the job done. And Walker LeBlanc as well at the receiver position. So they have a number of ways that they can do it. Their offense, again, they do like to go eye. They will go gun as well, but really they want to run the football right at you. And it's when you're able to do that and keep your offense on the field, you're able to melt the clock away, keep your defense fresh. And that's all St. Charles wants to do. While, again, Shaw, to you guys' point, I think, again, rightfully so, look, they've only given up 14.9 points a game over the course of the year, too. Their defense is physical. Their defensive front, in particular, Jaden Weber, Michael Banks, two big playmakers up front, really big and physical guys. And Ethan Lentz, a linebacker who's, again, a turnover machine. He's making big plays along with that secondary. And then on the offensive side of the football, they have to find a way to – obvious things are obvious. They need to find a way to move the football, however that may be. And maybe try to beat St. Charles at their own game. Because if you get caught up in trying to run fast pace and hurry up, get to the line and run the football, you're going to be in trouble against this St. Charles football team. Because if you're trying to go fast pace and St. Charles is able to stop you real quick, they're going to keep that offense on the field. So I think it's going to come down to Alan Shaw, Franklin DeAndre, and Tyron Pounds' ability to run the football against this St. Charles defense.
Yeah, this matchup's so interesting because of, again, I think from the coaching side of it, what are we going to do differently? Like Lance said, how are we going to scheme, game plan differently or the same as last time? And when you look back at this game in Week 10, that Shaw was still able to get a bye in the first round of the playoffs. This was the turning point in their season. They get shut out by St. Charles. They struggled offensively the last really 3 weeks of the season. They get a bye. They go back to work. They get back to doing what they, cleaning some things up, and then they go on this run through the playoffs. And very interested to see how they handle this second time around. Then on the final day, Saturday, two more rematches from two teams, from four teams that are playing each other for the second time, both in the same district. The noon game is Division One non-select 15 seed Washita Lions. They're coming at 10-4. They're taking on the 1 seed Ruston Bearcats, who come in at 11-2. Washita looking for their first state championship since 1988. Ruston was in the Superdome last year. They won it the year before, and they were in the Superdome in 22. So this senior class knows nothing but ending their season in the Superdome. They are looking to end it on a much more positive note than how it ended last year against Central. These two teams met in week 6. Both teams, Washita came into that game undefeated at 5-0, and to that point in the season, not only was Washita undefeated, they hadn't turned the ball over. Ruston wins that game 21-14. Montreal Connor, this Washita offense, turned it over twice. There was an interception in there. They lose 21-14. That started a 4-week stretch for Washita and a 4-game losing streak. They win in week 10 over Pineville, and then they've rolled and caught fire here in the playoffs. This is a Ruston team. I don't know the status of Dalen Powell. I don't know if you do, Jason, if you heard anything. They've been without him for a few weeks. Quarterback Sam Hartwell has kind of taken that load on and really done a good job in this running game. But this Washita Parish team, they're going to want to run the football. They're going to want to play defense. Again, we said it before this first matchup. If they don't turn the football over, they're going to have a chance to win this game in the fourth quarter.
Uh-oh. You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Lance. Go ahead and talk.
Yeah, I'll go for it. Yeah, I mean, I was the similar direction he was going right there. I think we see a much better Washita offensive attack. I think this team is hot. I think it was easy to count them out during that 4-game losing streak, but that really just speaks to the strength of that district. Because if you watch this team and see the players that they have, especially on this offense, this is without a doubt one of the best teams in Louisiana. I would have loved to see this Washita team play like St. Aug. I think that would have been an incredible matchup if we could ever seen that. But yeah, I think it comes down to turnovers. I think this Washita team, they've proven they can beat anybody, but they can also get caught with the turnover bug, and when they turn it over, they can't win just because of the teams that they play, like Ruston, are just too good to overcome turnovers. And so I think a lot of it comes down to turnovers. I mean, for the most part, Washita has really been good on both sides of the ball, averaging over 32 points a game, giving up under 20 points a game. Both teams have been clean on special teams. Both teams have a clean kicking game. So I mean, both of these teams are just so good, so well-rounded. They're so battle-tested. And so it's going to be really fun to watch. Obviously, on the Ruston side, the guy that you have to look for is Ahmad Hudson. He'll be the giant 6'7". But Washita's got some guys in the defensive backfield that can match up with them. Orlando Fremont and Dylan Johnson, some of the defensive backs that have turned it over, have forced turnovers for this Washita team as well.
Yeah, and when you look at this first matchup, I think Cass kind of hit the nail on the head. This was kind of what felt like the turning point in the season, of course, until Washita Parish, gets that win over Pineville and goes into the playoffs. But this team was undefeated and had a turnover over the course of the season. They're down 21-14 in a slog of a football game by Washita Parish's account. Their offense had been rolling. They were moving, again, scoring a ton of points, playing some really solid competition, and they throw an interception in the red zone to lose that football game against Ruston. And then you not only lose that football game, you proceed to lose 3 more times consecutively, all in close fashion. Now, here's the thing. You don't know what mindset is. You don't know what perspective is. You don't know the impact that moments like that have, what the butterfly effect is. If they won that game, do they go on to win the next 3? Are they undefeated going into the playoffs? Are they even in this position? Like, do they lose in round 2? Like, we don't know, right? But I think Washita Parish was where they needed to be when they needed to be there. And I think they've grown from those experiences. They picked up some of the most impressive playoff wins in this bracket. They go to Neville and win a 14-7 football game. They went to Destrehan and won there. Like, those are 2 really impressive wins, and speaks to the job that Coach Benji Lewis and his staff have done. And it's a team that, again, 5-5 coming into the playoffs. But look, the important thing to keep in mind is in their first matchup, they threw for only 31 yards, 5 of 19 with 1 interception. They ran for 242 yards. We know a large part of that offensive game plan is going to be Montrell Connor and MJ Dayton. Connor's thrown for over 2,000 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. But really lately, the story has been his ability to run the football, whether it's design plays or whether it's drop back pass, maybe have an opportunity to hit a receiver, but kind of looking to run with your feet as well. MJ Dade out the backfield has been exceptional. Mighty Mouse, as they call him, 1,700 yards on the season. He's been a big piece of that offense. And, of course, look, their receivers are solid pieces too. Whiteout Clark, Cameron Brooks, and Seneca Battle. All 3 of those guys have come up with big catches in big situations in their own times. And then on the defensive side of the football, guys, Dylan Berryman has been a big piece of this defense, and rightfully so. 21 tackles for loss. Not a bad season by any stretch of the imagination. 4 sacks on the season. And this defense has 29 sacks on the year. And that's going to be key when playing a Ruston team that does want to lean on the run, but they will pass the football. And I mentioned last week against Neville, I think the pass rush was really the ultimate factor in that football game. Jeremy Jones as well, 12 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. I think this Ouachita Parish defense is really going to have to come up big against a rush offense, as Cass mentioned. Dalen Powell, to my knowledge, I believe he was mentioned as out for the season before they kind of headed into the playoffs. But I will say, having watched their game against Zachary, Jeremiah Freeman, 5'9", 175, really quick, speedy back. But then they can mix in Caden Gray as well, the 6', 210 bruiser. And they let Sam Hartwell maneuver at the quarterback position, able to run and pass, whatever he needs to do to operate that offense. And, not only Hudson, but Malcolm Keyshawn, Josiah Morgan, both guys 6'2", 6'4", really big, rangy targets. And along with that defense in Jaden Anding, who's a big-time prospect for colleges everywhere, along with Raheem Potts, who's a big physical defensive lineman, and Keelan Davis, who's, again, another guy that has made his presence felt on that defense. So Ruston's been big and physical. I don't think they're going to change their style of play, and they want to run the football. Meanwhile, that's exactly what Ouachita Parish wants to do. So 2 teams that are trying to run the same exact type of offense. I got a feeling it's going to be a very similar game as the first one, 21-14 range. It's going to come down to which defense is able to maybe force a few more plays, force a few more mistakes from the opposing team's offense.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be physical, definitely going to be hard-hitting. It's one of the better matchups, really that we've seen all year. And just one quick note, Ouachita was at home first round of the playoffs. They escaped against St. Amant 24-21. They've been on the road every week since. And I think there's something to that. And I know that this is a neutral site game. Both teams are going to have to travel, 3.5, 4 hours down to the dome. But the travel part of it is not going to affect Ouachita. I cannot wait to watch that game. That game leads into the final game of the weekend. Speaking of not being able to wait to watch a game, this game's going to be unbelievable. I think the crowd for this one is going to be really fun. It's going to be huge. There's going to be a lot of people there. Obviously, the Division I Select State Championship, the 3 seed St. Aug Purple Knights will take on the 1 seed Edna Carr Cougars. Carr comes in at 13-0. St. Aug 12-1. Their lone loss in Week 5 to Carr, 42-21. Carr looking to go back-to-back. They won the Division I State Championship last year. St. Aug making their looking to win their first state championship since 1979. Purple Knight Nation is going to invade the Superdome. That's going to be a fun atmosphere. I think the game has potential to be just as fun as what's going on in the crowd. I wonder if there's anything, and look, this didn't help Ash last year. Catholic lost to Carr by 2 in the semis last year and went on and rolled Ash in the state championship. But I wonder if there's something St. Aug can take from the Catholic Carr game last week, whether it's something with scheme, whatever it is, if they can take something. Because look, the first meeting, these teams, it was kind of I know Carr ends up winning by 21. I don't know that the game was really that far apart. It maybe was probably closer to a 10 to 14 point game. Um, 2 plays here or there. So these teams are close. Carr obviously has been there, done that. St. Aug has been scratching and clawing to get back to this position for so long. I'm glad and happy to see them do it. I have been on this bandwagon all year long. Like you kind of see this coming. I can't wait to see Vashawn Coulon in a dome play this Card defense. I think that's going to be a heck of a matchup. But I think it's going to come down to the St. Aug defense. Can the St. Aug defense, whether it's creating turnovers, getting stops, holding Card to field goals, can they do something to keep them out of the end zone to give this offense enough time to try to score points?
You're muted. Got him.
I think all three of us have been real high on the St. Aug football team. I know even me and Jason dating back to when we watched them last year. And so it's really cool to see a special team have a special year. Though they deserve to be there. There's no question. Vashawn Coulon, they're going to find ways to score points. He's been amazing. He's got 50 total touchdowns. They have 50 total touchdowns in the Catholic League where everybody's playing such tough defense. Is so impressive, I believe. And so, but in the St. Aug offense, they want to run the football. They want to run the football. They want to throw it off their RPOs. And so, they've got to find ways to do that and stick to who they are because that's how they got here. With that said, it's easy to say that you want to run the football until you have to block Richard Anderson and those guys up front. And so I know that Coach Valdez, very well-respected offensive line coach in the area. He's going to have a great plan for that really tough defensive line of Carr. I just don't know if there's any plan out there that even exists to block these guys, right? But they got to try to stick to who they are. They got to try to stick to their RPO game, run the football. They can't turn it over, which is another thing that's easy to say. Catholic turned it over 3 times last week, but it wasn't like they were loose with the football. Aiden Hall is just that good of a football player in the backfield that he forces turnovers. And Richard Anderson and these guys put so much pressure on you up front that they force turnovers. So they got to do whatever they can to secure the football, not turn it over. On the Carr side, I think that, like you said, there's got to be some stuff to take away from that Catholic film. Like, how did Catholic do it? Like, what did they do to really slow these guys down? Part of it could have been the weather, but there's got to be some good takeaways for the St. Aug defense to say, hey, here's some tweaks that is going to help us out, against this tough Carr offense. But in the end, my biggest concern for St. Aug would be that I just don't know if up front they can handle the offensive line of Carr. Jason has mentioned it a few times. I think the most underrated part of this Carr football team is their running game. Trey Garrison, the Washington State commit, he's a big physical running back. Their offensive line is unbelievable. They don't get talked about enough. They have 2 big-time tackles in Leon Noyle and Xylon Wesley. When we saw the Carr in person, what really stood out to me was the offensive line that I didn't even realize how good they were, and so it's just there's so many other guys that we talk about, but their offensive line is unbelievable. St. Aug, not nearly as big up front on the defensive side. So how can they slow down that running game of Carr? That is going to be the key, I think, to St. Aug keeping this game close.
In the Catholic League, Carr has only yielded 11.2 points a game defensively. And when I look at this Carr team, it's so easy to get caught up in offense. But their defense is just unbelievable. Romeo Brown, again, linebacker for this football team, I believe is an Alabama A&M commit. And look, he is a heck of a football player who doesn't get the recognition because you have Richard Anderson up front, right? You also have as a part of that line, you have Jules Batiste, who's getting a ton of look, 6'6" defensive end who can go make plays for this defense. Oh, by the way, 4 defensive backs who are all signing D1 and going play in power conferences. So this defense is so big. They're so physical. They go to the football. They travel the football really well. And what makes it such a difficult matchup for St. Aug is they're able to do what very few teams are able to do. We know St. Aug, yes, they like to run the football, but really they want to spread you out. They really want to be able to pass the football with Coulon and go to, Miguel Whitley, who is one of my favorite receivers in the state. Again, only a junior with some major looks. Derek Bennett might be one of the most impressive playoff players we've seen, has really made a big jump after the injury of Daquan Williams. He's looked absolutely unbelievable, even going back to the Holy Cross game, Lance, when we got to see him play. I've really been impressed with Bennett, but Bashawn Sims, like, they want to pass the football. They do like to run. Khalil Lewis has over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns, but Carr is able to say, you want to do that? That's fine. We'll match you up. We'll go man on man and we'll match you up. And I don't know that there's that many teams in the state, if any other team, that can do it the way that Carr is and is able to do. So it's going to be difficult for this St. Aug offense. But again, they put up 14 points offensively. There's a defensive touchdown the last time they played. So they have a lot that they feel that they need to prove in this football game. I think it's going to be really interesting to see this Carr offense as well going at it. They do. Garrison has been their big guy, but Jamon Macklin's another big-time back for this team that you'll see getting mixed in along with Greg Wolford at receiver, Xavier Owens, again, only Division I caliber wide receivers as well. So this St. Aug defense, though, I do feel has been a bit underrated. Sire Gilmore is an absolute playmaker in that second level. We got to see an interception by him against Holy Cross. That was just unreal. He just goes and makes plays. And then Ty Dominic, who is a UL commit, a big physical defensive lineman, and he's going to have his work cut out for him against that big offensive line of Carr. But again, I think if St. Aug is going to win this game, they have to be able to control the football. And I don't know how easy that's going to be when you are playing a team like Carr that is so versatile defensively. And, the Purple Knights have the ability to have that big play, but you can't not score. But they would really I think they would really prefer to get chunk yardage, to get 10 yards every time and hold on to the football, keep that Carr offense off the field. But that's a Herculean task.
Yeah. I think this sounds simple, but I think St. Aug just seeing these guys for a second time really benefits them just because I know the last 2 years when I go down on that field and see Carr for the first time, there is a wow factor. Just they're so big. They just they're an incredible looking football team. And the fact that St. Aug has already seen them, already competed against them, has reason to be confident. They put up 21 points on this team. I think there's an element there that, maybe St. Aug just gets off to a much better start, comes in a little bit more confidence because they've seen it. They have seen Richard Anderson. I'm sure I would be super excited to see him again, but they have seen him before. You know what I'm saying? So, there's that wow factor maybe won't be there that, might have been there that first time.
No, I think this is of the 3 rematches, this is the one where that plays the biggest role because Carr's so physically imposing. Like in the other 2, those teams are evenly matched, but they look the same. This Carr team doesn't look like any other high school football team. But St. Aug's they've hit them. They hit them. They've mixed it up with them. So they're not going to be that. What I wonder is when we looked at the Catholic Carr game last week, we could point to the game script Catholic wanted to win it, and it was to keep it low scoring and keep it ugly. I am starting to think the game script for St. Aug is going to be the opposite. Not that you want to get into a track meet with Carr, but St. Aug, they're going to want to hit big explosive plays. Now, if you're doing that and you're trying to do that, that may lend itself to, if it doesn't work out, you might get blown out. But I think that's going to be St. Aug's way. Let's not try to hold Carr 17. Let's make them try to hold us to 35. Something. I think that may be the way to do it. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. It's going to be fun.
It feels like Carr could just line up and run the football at him, but I don't think that's just not them. I don't think they're patient enough to do that. And I think they want their guy John Johnson to be their guy and be the MVP of the night. And so I think that plays a part of it too. And could that lend a turnover here or there to St. Aug, right?
Yeah, and you talk about mentioned Sire Gilmore, who's been all over the field. He's made some incredible interceptions. You got Chad Jones Jr. back there at linebacker who makes some plays as well. I think your guys' point, if you can start to force Carr to feel the need to press offensively. So by forcing a turnover, by getting an early stop, I think St. Aug has to, very similar to how we talked about Rummel playing St. Aug. Like they had to come out early and impose their will early and kind of get St. Aug to feel off balance, which I don't think really happened, right? But to this point for St. Aug, I think they have to do something early on, whether it's a big play. I don't even think it's offensively, honestly. I think it has to be a defensive play. Like what are they gonna do defensively to maybe get Carr feeling off, to maybe feel the need to press? So I think I kind of disagree. I think they will be content to sit and run the football. I think they will pass, but again, they might take like a shot, but I think they're willing to allow their backing Garrison and to run the football the way he has. But I think it's going to take a big stop here and there early on, or maybe a forced fumble or an interception to maybe make them feel a little bit of pressure, to feel like they have to press and have to go vertical to kind of catch up on the scoreboard.
Yeah, no, they're going to have to make a big play early. And I think, I don't know that the crowd's going to be 50-50, but you get your St. Aug fans on their feet and you create some of that atmosphere, and it will make Carr feel uncomfortable. And you want to get that crowd into it early. So we'll see. Saturday's got a chance to be so fun. So with both of these matchups, and
it's got to be the best. I can't imagine a better environment ever. I mean, this is like the matchup that everybody's been hoping to see in the Dome.
And guys, I think what's even more so adds to the interest of this game. Let me phrase that: this entire day, Saturday, there's two teams that are playing that haven't been there in quite some time. To my knowledge, I believe I've heard St. Aug has not been to the Dome ever. They won in 1970. They won in 1979.
The state championships were not played in the Superdome.
Correct.
So the last time they won it was 79. So their fans are going to come jacked up. They're going to be ready to go. They're going to be loud. Maybe leave the vuvuzelas that Neville was using at home. So I don't want to have to listen to that on the broadcast.
They don't need that. I think they got trumpets and trombones and drums. That's all they need.
Well, they got the World Cup going on elsewhere. We don't need to bring it into the Superdome. All right, like we can leave that somewhere else. But I think Ouachita, not having been there in quite some time, getting that opportunity at a rematch in what we've called one of, if not the best districts in the state in 2-5A, getting a rematch on the field. I'm really juiced about Saturday. I think it's going to be so much fun.
No, it is. Look, the whole week's going to be, the whole weekend's going to be fun, but Saturday has a chance to be special for sure on many different levels. While we got you, follow, like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on YouTube, on X, share, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Facebook. We've enjoyed the heck out of doing this. We got one more week left. The most important games of the season, 8 of them left. So hop on and join us for the rest of this season. But this weekend is going to be so much fun. If you're still with us, look, we will do a recap show for the state championship games. It may not be Sunday at our regular time, but we will have a wrap-up show for the season to kind of put a bow on everything and talk about what transpires this weekend in the Superdome. But this Prep Classic has a chance to be one of the best ever. Just the matchup, especially those last three, starting with Friday night, Shaw St. Charles leading into Ouachita Ruston, and then St. Aug and Carr. Man, what special time for these kids and coaches. It's such a cool event to go make some memories. And I think the easiest part of this, aside from, different from what it was last week, all of these kids know, these seniors, this is their last football game. They know it. Yep. They know it right now. So put your helmets on, go out there and turn it loose, have a good time, and see what happens. So,
what better? Both you guys, coach. What better gift could you give your player to know the last practice they're going to have, and that your last game is going to be played and it's going to be in the Superdome? There's no greater gift as a coach you can give your player.
No, the last practice thing is something. It's a real thing, because in baseball, when we made it to the semis, we knew that was the last practice at that. Like it's cool. It's a cool thing. So those guys get to experience it. Very fired up to see it. So thank y'all for watching. We will recap the weekend that is and talk about the state championships at some point this weekend. We will get that out to y'all, and we look forward to seeing y'all again. But for Lance, for Jason, I am Cass. Thank you for watching Talking Ball. we will see y'all at the Superdome this weekend for the Louisiana High School Football State Championship.